Welcome to today's amazing event. My name is Dave McCleary. I'm the global chair for Rotarians Against Modern Day Slavery. And we just really want to thank you for this opportunity to present to you today. And really today is a day about hope. And you saw in the video, the power of one. We are all the power of one. And I want to just give a special thanks to Laura Ellsworth and Matt Friedman for their co-hosting the event. One of our board members, and I want to welcome our board for the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery, as well as our coordinators from around the world. And bottom line, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We've got over 450 participants from 6 different continents around the world. It's just an incredible, amazing opportunity for all of us. And just a little bit about Rotary. Rotary is an organization, for those that don't know it, I'm also really excited to see that there's a large percent of non-Rotarians on this call today. And Rotary is an organization that's been around 116 years. We have 1.2 million Rotarians in over 200 countries, 34,000 clubs around the world, with our express motto of service above self. And Rotary is organized in areas of focus, for instance, economic development, peace and resolution, conflict, disease prevention, things like that. But what we understand with the issue of modern day slavery and human trafficking is, with the absence of peace in a community, we cannot accomplish any of those goals that we set out for Rotary. So we believe that the issue of slavery is so vital to all of our human rights around the world. And Rotary is on the verge of eradicating polio. And we hope that one day the issue of modern day slavery is the next big initiative that we do. And Rotary is also organized by what they call action groups. And that's what we are part of. And I'm excited to present to you today, but also to tell you how much momentum we've gained as an action group since 2013. We're now in 62 countries. And just even though the time of COVID is a horrible time for the world, as you know, we've actually expanded our reach during this time, because as we know that with COVID going on, the world has only gotten more dangerous. There's more victims of modern day slavery and human trafficking than ever before. So it's important that we continue to work towards that goal. And we have actually increased our board members by 3 continents, South America, Africa, and Asia, over this period of virtual meetings that we're having. But today is really a day about hope, inspiration, and action. One thing that we understand is that we're not just going to talk about this, but we're going to actually take action. And I'm just so excited to this amazing group of panelists that we have today, and keynote speakers that are leaders in this field for many, many years, long before I was involved. And to see the amazing progress that's been made over the last really 2 or 3 years is just incredible. And we just really want to share that with you today. And I'll say too that I heard one time that, you know, what's the story that we're going to tell our grandkids one day, what we did about human trafficking and modern day slavery? You think about the legacy that Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela made on the strives for freedom around the world. And that's what we plan on doing. The other thing I would say is that we've really engaged the youth, and you'll hear some of the things we're doing with prevention throughout this program. But we know that our work today is laying the groundwork for the youth to eventually end the issue of modern day slavery. So I just really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here, and so excited about this opportunity. And I'm going to learn a lot from it too. And so we look forward to amazing, amazing panelists. Next, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, one of my favorite people in the world, and it's Laura Ellsworth from Jones Day. Laura is the partner in charge of global community initiatives around the world. And we actually met in Bangkok. I was at a conference and she was there on meetings with Kurt, who you'll meet later on in the program. And we just hit it off right away and just saw the real synergy about how Rotary and Jones Day and other organizations could work together, because Rotary is a convener. And we've seen such amazing partnerships since then. We held a large summit in DC at the Jones Day office about now 2 years ago. And it was just incredible to see not only the summit itself, but to see what came out of that, true action, what came out of that. And that's what's going to happen from today's event. And we're going to continue to to grow and to learn and to work together to collaborate, because we believe the key to this entire issue is collaboration. And the other thing I'll say about Laura is that every time I talk to somebody, no matter where I am in the world, they said, you know, Laura, you need to talk to Laura. And so she's just an incredible inspiration and a credible partner. And we're just thankful to have her on this issue. So welcome aboard, Laura.
Thank you so much, Dave. And I really want to open by thanking you and by thanking Rotary. You know, ever since that night that we first met and talked under the railway, remember, in Bangkok, about what could be done to advance the fight against human trafficking, you and the leadership of Rotary have been an absolute inspiration to us and to so many other people. So thank you for convening us all today, and thank you for just the extraordinary work that you do day in and day out. For those of you on this webcast, we know that many of you have been longtime members of the fight against human trafficking, both labor trafficking and sex trafficking. And there are others of you who are new to the fight. We have people who are in all different countries, all different sectors, all different businesses. And the one thing I will say to you is this: every single one of you can play a valuable role in the fight against human trafficking, every single one of you, because trafficking is present in your community, it's present in your business sector. And the power of one isn't just a slogan, the power of one is the truth. And so my ask of all of you who are listening is very simple. As you listen to all of these panelists, they are extraordinary people who are actually making change. As Dave said, that's what we're about. That's what Rotary is about. It's not about talking about the issue. It is about driving change. And the people you're going to hear today are some of the top people in the world who are doing just that. And so listening to them, ask yourself this: what can I do in my community to take forward the things that they're sharing with me? Who do I know who can join with me to help do that in my community? And if you do that active listening here, you will leave this day with the ability to help join us in the fight against human trafficking, one of the greatest evils that exists in the world. And as the opening video showed you, this is our time and our moment to change that. So thank you for being here. Thank you for willingness to listen and to be a part of the solution. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our co-chair, tri-chair, I guess, Matt Friedman, who is known, I'm sure, to everybody on this call. Matt has been a global leader for more than 30 years in the fight against human trafficking, before many of us even heard the phrase. And whether with the UN or USAID, or now in his role as the CEO of Mekong Club based in Hong Kong, he has just been an absolute global leader, advisor to governments, and inspiration to everybody else pretty much in the field. And it's late at night where he is, and he's going into the early morning hours for all of us. So it's a real privilege to have you here, Matt, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Laura. Thanks, Dave. I can't say enough about both of those people. They have really committed themselves to make this a successful event. I want to thank Rotary and thank all of you for participating in this event today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a very quick talk just for a few minutes to set the pace and the tone. And I also wanted to say that that video that we watched was an amazing starting point, because I'm going to pretty much emulate the same types of things. I can't start talking about human trafficking without showing some cases. Here you see a sex trafficking victim. 4.2 million women and girls around the world are forced into prostitution every year. You see a fishing boat. We've heard about the Thai fishing industry and all the terrible things that happen to young people going out for 4 years, being tortured on the boats, thrown off. You see a sweatshop on the bottom. This is another Thai site, a factory that has had people in there for at least 5 or 6 years, unable to leave because they get tricked and deceived into a situation. You see this boy in the bottom. I worked in Bangladesh, and we had infants, 2-year-olds, being trafficked from Bangladesh to the Middle East. And this is just a few of the myriad of different types of trafficking situations that we see. So when it comes to the problem, as was indicated, it's about 40 million people in modern slavery. There are more slaves today than any other time in history. In fact, there are more slaves today than there are Canadians. About 25,200 people enter per day, or a new slave every 4 seconds. So if you count to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in the world, somebody has entered into modern slavery, and the drug beats on and on and on. That was a bad news, but it gets a little even worse. The number of people who actually are helped annually from modern slavery is 0.2%. And this number has been about this for the last 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years. So we need to change this. And this is the reason why we need more people to get involved to be a part of the solution. Part of the reason why this situation exists is there's approximately $150 billion that is generated from modern slavery. In fact, this is second only to drug trafficking as a transnational crime. The amount of money that goes into addressing this is about 350 million. So you can see what we're up against. Only 0.23% of the money that is generated from modern slavery is available to address the issue. When it comes to the number of people that are fighting this, there's approximately 20,000 do-gooders like me around the world against 500,000 greed incentivized criminals who don't have to follow any rules. And in addition to that, you have a lot of people who simply don't know about the problem. We can add to that with the emerging trends that are happening as a result of COVID. With COVID, the world has changed significantly. People who had jobs no longer have jobs. They're sent home. They're sitting in their house. They're not working. No money's coming in. And as a result of that, you have factories that are empty, but at the same time, you have people who are becoming desperate. They tap into their savings. They basically use up all of their savings. And the only way to eat is to borrow. So you have a certain number of people who are entering into debt. As we all know, debt is basically one of the main ingredients for exploitation, because what happens is when the people who offered the debt or the loans to the individuals go and seek to get that debt payment back, there's nothing to be given. So they take away sons and daughters or husbands or wives to go off and work. So we anticipate the possibility of significant increases in modern slavery. We expect, for example, that up to another 20 million people can enter into modern slavery. And to put this into perspective, the World Bank estimates that 500 million people will fall back into poverty as a result of this. And so we have to be very careful of this situation. Now, I work with the private sector, and the private sector has only been kind of actively involved in addressing this for about 10 years. Part of the reason for them entering was that 0.2% number. When countries came to realize that the private sector was involved in this particular issue, they changed laws. Some of the laws basically said if you are a manufacturer or a large company, you have any products in the United States or the UK or Australia, you have to put on your website what you're doing to address modern slavery. So this legislation, which is called transparency legislation, basically allows consumers to see what companies are doing. We're seeing a significant increase in media coverage. Over the last 5 years, there's been almost a doubling every year of articles and exposés related to human trafficking. And we expect that this trend will continue for years to come. We see a situation where ESG, the metric that is used basically to measure the do-gooderness of a company, is becoming an issue. E represents environmental, G is governance. Those metrics have been in place for a long time, but S, where modern slavery fits, hasn't really been well articulated. And so school teachers who have their retirement in a mutual fund will ask the investment companies, how do we know that what we are putting our money in isn't tainted by modern slavery? So we're seeing an emphasis on this particular topic being really important. We will see more of this over time. And lastly, we have lawsuits that are being given all over the world, where you have major companies that, say, for instance, buy seafood from Thailand that are being sued because the plaintiffs are saying you're supporting modern slavery. So all of these elements represent business risks that result in the private sector stepping up and getting involved because they recognize that they have to address these things. So when it comes to kind of For years, we have had issues. We have had problems in the counter-trafficking world, but things are changing. So one of the things that we have seen over the years is general awareness has been low. But if you look at what Rotary International is doing, they are, through their 1.2 million people, educating Rotarians, going out to schools, going out to health centers to basically help them to understand the issue of human trafficking. This demonstrates a remedy that's being used. Collaboration has been lacking. We've seen this for years, that organizations haven't really worked well together. But what we're seeing is the Noble, a new organization that is bringing financial institutions together, working with law enforcement, working with the NGO sector, combining these efforts in a way that is going to result in some tangible changes taking place. Data collection and analysis has been lacking. And then what we see is the Traffic Analysis Hub has come into play. This organization works with all kinds of NGOs to collect data, to analyze it, to make it available, and to use it as intelligence. We've seen that there are people who say there was too much talk and not enough action, but look at the work that Hope for Justice is doing. They're working in continents all over the world, basically reaching communities, taking that information, helping to influence laws, legislation, etc. We see that the private sector companies weren't working together. My organization, the Mekong Club, works with companies, brings them together on a quarterly basis, uses those opportunities basically to identify the needs of the private sector, and then to apply that in a way that allows for the private sector to be involved in addressing the issue. Interventions needed to be packaged, and then Polaris came along. Polaris does an amazing job of collecting information, working with law enforcement, bringing the NGOs together. These are just a few of the many, many organizations that are out there doing amazing things. The point I'm making is the days of us being in a situation where, we didn't have remedies are being replaced with organizations stepping up, getting involved, offering, in essence, a sense of hope. And so what I want to end with is just a simple story. And for me, what I'd like to kind of relate is the fact that ideas plus action equals hope and impact. Ideas, wishes, hopes, dreams aren't enough. We have to have action. And as Laura said, we all have a role to play. But this is the story I'd like to end with. And I almost feel like anyone who addresses modern slavery is heroic. So about a year and a half ago, I was at a conference in Washington, D.C. I had finished, it was a banking conference. Afterwards, somebody comes running up to me and says, "Mr. Friedman, I want to talk to you about something that happened to me." This often happens in conferences. So he said, I was taking my family from one side of the country to the other. About halfway there, I stopped at a motel, got my 2 teenage daughters and my wife settled. I was going out for food. And as I was leaving, I saw a 14-year-old girl being dragged into a room. Looked like it had something to do with prostitution. It was quite violent. I was very upset by this. And so I went to the manager, not knowing if anything was going to happen. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, the police came. 20 minutes later after that, the person was being taken away in handcuffs. The girl was put in an unmarked car, presumably to a shelter. I felt, this is what the person said, like this was a milestone in my life, that this was a major achievement. It was something that I feel so good about, and I had to tell you this. So I turned to this person and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Well, I'm a banker." I said, "Well, I get that. You're at a banking conference, but what do you do within the bank?" He said, "He looks at fraud and money laundering and corruption." I asked him if he ever focused on human trafficking, and he says, "Yes, we get these cases, we'll run the data, we will pass suspicious transaction reports to law enforcement." So I looked at him and I said, "Dude, you do this all the time. By you doing your job, you're basically helping to identify criminal activity and passing that on to somebody who might do exactly what you saw that day happen." He didn't make that connection. It was like an epiphany for him. Somebody was saying to him that he had the power to change within the private sector. And all of a sudden he said, "Wow, that makes me feel real good." Well, a couple of months later, I was in Singapore and I was in front of about 650 bankers. And I told the same story. Afterwards, I had about 20 or 30 bankers come over and say, "Oh my gosh, Nobody ever says that to us, but you're right. We have the power to be able to change, to make an impact, to use what it is that we have to make a difference. Now, I say this because the private sector, whether you're in supply chains, whether you're in hotels, whether you're in banks, whether you're in construction, all of us within the private sector have the potential to use the skills, the abilities to look at, to find, and to address human trafficking wherever it might be. Why do we need to do this? Because we're only helping 0.2% of the victims. We need the governments, the private sector, the NGOs, the United Nations, and the general public, and everybody to understand that this issue isn't going to go away unless we collectively as a world accept some responsibility, say enough is enough, and make it happen. Thank you very much.
Well done, Matt. Thank you so much for that talk. And again, so that those that don't know, Matt is on the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery Board, recently joined, has been a terrific mentor of mine for many years. And I'll just mention too, he's written a book called The Hero, which is on Amazon. It's a little hard to see there, but check it out. It's about the hero inside all of us. So I just really thank you for your work, your incredible work. And we all are the power of one. And Rotary is international, but we're community based. And if each of us does what we can do in our own community, the global impact we can have is enormous.